Welcome back to another tutorial with Vintage Market Design Furniture Paint. We're going to go back to some basics today and talk about the different ways that you can enhance your paint once you've got your primer, if you need it, and your base coats on. There's a lot of confusion about when to use wax, when to use glaze, when to use the crowning touch or the grunge, and I think of those as the 4 enhancers. I love plain paint. We've got a couple coats of antique on our sample board here today, and that's a very pretty finish, and we could do one of our clear coats over it and call it a day. But it's a lot of fun, and some of us that are addicted to these different paint finishes want to do something to enhance it. And it also can make it look a lot more professional because it gives it depth, you get more contrast, and it just looks like we've got a phone call. And it just looks like a real professional job. So I'm going to start out by just taping off some of the sections and just show you side by side what the differences are between them. When I teach my classes to the students with this paint line, that's what I do for 101. We'll go over the priming and the base painting and to do a very light coat for chemical bond in your second coat and wait overnight. And then we go through all these processes because, as I said, some people have only used glaze, some people have never used wax, or vice versa. So it's just fun to see what you can do to make it look different with these enhancing products. So what I'm going to do first of all is start out with our wax. And I'm going to use colors in all of the products so that you can see, so that they're kind of similar in color and you can see exactly what the difference is. So we're just going to tape off one end of this to get our wax on there. Now, for those of you that are not familiar with Vintage Market and Design wax, it is a beautiful thing. It is all natural wax, beeswax and carnauba wax, hand-poured earth pigments. And we've said before, if you haven't heard it, you've got to stir this up when you first buy it. When you first buy the colored waxes, it'll look like maybe a pale brown or a pale gray if it's the dark umber or the black. And if you mix it up, you're going to get all of those earth pigments up from the bottom, and you're going to end up with something dark like this that looks like frosting and has a lot of color to it. And that's what you want to do with this when you first buy it. A lot of times I will leave it out in the sun when I first get it and let it soften a little bit for half an hour, and it makes it really easy to mix it up. So that's going to be the first product that I do. Nice thing is I don't have to worry about getting it on my hands because it's a conditioner, and it actually will help to keep these dry hands moist in New Mexico. So I'm going to make sure my tape is down nice and tight. And when using the wax, I don't have to use clear wax first and then use the dark wax. I will find that this dark wax does not grab. It doesn't do any streaking on its own. It gives a very uniform, nice finish. And so I can just go right ahead with the dark wax and apply it to this light color and not have to worry. Personally, I always start out with the recessed areas because I want to have more color in there. And when I say more, I'm still using a very light touch compared to a lot of other products. The key problem that people have with the wax is using too much and then not taking enough off and not letting it cure enough. So the idea behind this is we're applying a light layer of it. We're just doing it to get the pigment on there and enhance it and condition the surface. And then after it has absorbed, and it's the pigment that is absorbing, not the medium, but once the pigment has absorbed, a little bit of the medium will evaporate on the top, and then we're going to go over and remove the rest of it. And I think so much about painting reminds me about makeup, because 100 years ago I used to sell makeup and be a makeup artist, and there's a lot of similarities. When you put foundation on, you don't buff it into your skin, you apply it, and then you probably take a sponge or some kind of a tool or maybe your hands, and you get the excess off because you don't want it to sit on top of the skin. It makes the pores show up more, and it looks greasy, and it doesn't last as long because it slides around a lot. So it's the same idea with this. We're putting it on, and then we're removing as much as we can so that there's no fingerprints and no smudginess or stickiness. And We are not using the wax as a sealer. This wax is not your sealer, this is your enhancer. Now, if I were not constricted by time here with doing a video, I could put this on, this is the dark umber, and walk away and leave it for up to 72 hours. And the pigments absorb more and more and more over that 72-hour period. And then when you go to take it off, you've got really beautiful dark areas where it has absorbed into the recessed areas. And you'll get more contrast that way. But for the sake of getting this done in a reasonable time, I'm just going to put it on and take it off. And as I take it off, I'm not trying to get a sheen from it. I will get any sheen from my finished product, my clear coats or my matte finished cream, which has just a slight bit of a sheen to it. I'm not trying to get this into a glossy finish as you would on a car. I'm just removing the excess. I just love this dark umber. It is a very neutral brown. It doesn't have too much gold or too much red, and it's just a great antiquing color. Now, if you see a piece of furniture that has a lot of striations or streaking on it, you want to hope that that's not done with the wax products, because if you leave that much wax on that you're getting that dramatic antique look, it's going to be too much wax and it's not going to be stable in the long run. So you want to do that type of antiquing with the striations and the streaking with some of our other products, which we'll show you. What you want to do with the wax is just get a general all over mellow antique look. It's really an easy wax to work with. It comes off very nicely. And you can see I went right on that antique and there's not one single streak. It doesn't grab at all. And I think that's because it's a natural wax. You don't have the petroleum products that are doing their own thing and not cooperating. And if there were a scent attached to this video, you would see that, you would smell that there's no scent that's obnoxious or harsh. I'm not having to ventilate the room or open a window. It's just really mild and nice. Okay, so I have used a terry cloth to get off my initial surface. I'm going to go over it one more time because you can never take too much off. And then I'm going to go to a microfiber cloth, and they are going to be selling these through Vintage Market Design. And it's really important to make sure you get the correct type of microfiber, because some of them still have lint, even though it says microfiber on the label. So you want to make sure you get the kind that does not have any lint, because you don't want to leave any little fibers in the surface. And also, it just doesn't move it around the way you want it to when it has that kind of feeling. So I wad it up just like I did my terry cloth with a flat surface and start taking it off. And you can see with just a couple strokes the difference between this section and this one where I just did it with the terry cloth. This is smoothed out, it's pushed the product into the surface even more, and you can't feel it. Over here it's still a little tacky and smudgy, so you want to make sure you get to that point where you can't feel it and it's the majority is taken off the surface. And you'll also have quite a bit on your microfiber cloth. Now, one of the advantages of wax when you're doing antiquing is you will not get streaks. If you have to be the kind of person that has trouble getting a nice, smooth, uniform antiquing finish with your glazes, then you might want to go to the wax, because you can see streaking is not an option. The only real heavy contrast you have is between the recessed areas and the high areas. And you want that, because that's what gives us that look of age. And that's what makes it look professional versus just a painted surface without any enhancing on it. So your application for this would be, your primer if you need it. If you've got a wood with tannins that you need to seal off, you'd use the block at first. Then you'd do 2 coats of paint, and you would wait 24 hours after your last coat of paint, and then you would apply this wax, and then you would wait again till the end of that day or the next day to do your clear coat. But you want to make sure that you do a clear coat on top of this. And you can see the difference between the wax and the regular antique paint just after it being on the surface a couple minutes. You can imagine if we left this on 72 hours how much richer and deeper the color would be. But I just love this color the way it is. And I'm not going to get a sheen from this. I'm just going to get a nice, little bit less than satin finish. So I'm going to take the tape off and we'll see what the wax looks like. We need a commercial break now. Here it comes. There we go. Okay. So you can see the depth that you get with that. Okay, so that's wax. Let's move over to the next section and try getting the same type of effect with our glaze.